Good afternoon, everyone. I think we will go ahead and make a start. I want to first start by welcoming all of you to our special guest lecture presentation today. My name is Peter Mandaville. I'm the director of the AVACGIS Center for Global Islamic Studies here at George Mason University. And on behalf of myself and the center's research director, Professor Ꭴské fikgsmå, who's joining us, and also our Events and Outreach Coordinator, Kara, who will be working with us today as well. Want to thank you all for being part of today's presentation. We are delighted to welcome, virtually at least, to the AVACGIS Center, Professor Jeff Einboden from Northern Illinois University's Department of English. I am not even going to try to attempt to speak out loud the characters and text in the main title of his presentation. And I think he's going to thankfully explain to us at the outset of his presentation the nature of the talk's title. He is widely published in the area of intersections between early American culture and Islam, has a book in 2016 with Oxford University Press on the Islamic lineage of American literary culture, and more recently in 2020 also with Oxford University Press, a book on Jefferson's Muslim fugitives. And I will, as the talk gets started, I will put in the chat box a link to his online bio so that you can learn more about his very interesting portfolio of publications. I wanted to make sure that all of you are aware that today's session is being recorded, particularly for the benefit of those who are not able to join us. For those of you who registered for the talk, you will all receive a link to the recording when it becomes live. We are planning to record only the presentation part of Dr. Einboden's lecture today and not the Q&A. When his presentation is finished, we will open the floor for a question and answer and discussion period, and you will be able to participate in that either by raising your hand or just letting me know in the chat room that you have a question to ask. So without further ado, let me again offer a very warm welcome to Dr. Einboden and hand the virtual floor over to him. Jeff?
Thank you so much. And I'm going to just share my screen, which I hope will work. Is that working?
Yes, it's not in presentation mode,
Yeah.
so we're.
Here we go. How
Looks
about that?
good. Looks good.
Look good. Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's still morning here in Illinois, but good afternoon. First, let me begin by just thanking the AVACGIS Center for Global Islamic Studies for this kind invitation to speak, which I really do consider a great honor for me. But briefly, before I begin, as Peter said, the talk of my title merits just a little explanation. It's written in a script that might be unfamiliar to us, the syllabic script of Cherokee, a language representing the southern branch of the Iroquoian, the broader Iroquoian language family. And this very year in 2021 marks the 200-year anniversary of the script fashioned by Sequoia, with the finalized script emerging in 1821. So 2021 celebrates the bicentennial of Cherokee syllabics, the script that you see here. Which makes me all the more happy to speak with you today here in 2021 and to offer this as the title of my talk, Ꭴché fikgsmå, from Islamic sources to Iroquoian inscriptions. My title's terms, its initial Cherokee text, is a quotation, translation from a translation made nearly 7 decades ago from an ultimate Arabic source, these Cherokee words deriving from an Arabic original that reads, "Kana Allah wa lam yakun ma'hu min shay." God was, and with him nothing else, or in Cherokee, God exclusively was, God was alone. So my talk today traces the intertwining of traditions spanning the Islamic religious and the Iroquoian written, rooted in early America, but reaching up to the 20th century, when the terms of my title were first formulated to express Tawheed in Cherokee. So my talk is about a half an hour, after which I'm hoping we'll have some time, as Peter said, to chat. 10 years ago today, on November the 16th, 2011, American media sites and news outlets continued to air stories about US law and the Sharia. Legislation drafted in certain states, so-called bills to ban Sharia, featured in political debates, filled newspaper op-eds. This 2011 controversy was regularly reported, prompting a variety of views from prominent names, including elected US officials. One national leader and one news outlet that weighed in during this same autumn of 2011 did not receive widespread attention, but for us today seems especially significant. Published in Indian Country Today, Mohawk Chief Tom Porter was interviewed for a September 2011 article expressing opposition to these state-level bills. The column, entitled "Campaign Against Sharia Law, a Threat to Indian Country," appealed to Chief Porter as one of its authorities, asserting that, quote, "Banning any kind of religion or spiritual practice is a mistake," says Mohawk spiritual leader and Longhouse Chief Tom Porter, Bear Clan. "It's a danger to everybody. This country is supposed to have been founded on the principle of people being allowed to practice any religion they want. So I don't know how they can make a law against any religion," he says. The Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederacy, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora Indian nations have a moral guide called the Code of Handsome Lake that is analogous in some ways to Sharia. End quote. Spiritual guide and elder celebrated for his language revitalization, striving to preserve Mohawk, passing it forward to next generations. Chief Tom Porter is here quoted in the column that spans sacred codes, bridging canons, Islamic and Iroquoian, linking Quranic legacies to the Code of Handsome Lake, the quote-unquote good message revealed in Upper New York State to the Seneca prophet Handsome Lake starting in around 1799, a code framed as canon for the Haudenosaunee Confederacy in the column. Crossing boundaries of culture and creed, this column in 2011 may seem surprising. But more surprising is that this analogy reported 10 years ago was far from new in 2011, but recalled similarly drawn parallels reaching back 2 centuries. Edmund Wilson, remembered by some as, quote, the 20th century's most distinguished American man of letters, appealed to Islam's advent in his apologies to the Iroquois, with Wilson tracing continuities too between the Quran and the Code of Handsome Lake. Scriptures linked for Wilson due to perceived similarities of their angelic transmission and especially their oral priorities, verbally recited in advance of inscription, a polarity between orality and literacy that possessed urgency, Wilson implies, not only for 7th century Arabia, but for 1799 America and the Iroquoian North. Wilson's own book was published in 1960, but more than a century before, already circulating were more compelling, more concrete intersections between these canons, Islamic and Iroquoian. And aptly, in light of the 2011 newspaper that quotes Chief Tom Porter, advocate for an Iroquoian language, these much early analogies would appear not only in American newspapers, but in Native American languages. As America's first languages began to bridge the print gap, passing from live performance to periodical publication in particular, through the 19th century, Muslim sources would play a surprising role, emerging in landmark indigenous newspapers crossing the continent from the Midwest, where I am right now, to the far north. A continental crossing that is witnessed in pages such as these, the left-hand images from the first Inuit language newspaper, and the right-hand cover page from a landmark newspaper in Dakota, both newspapers not only featuring frequent appeals to Islam, but even renditions of the religion's core confession, the Shahada, which is partial in Kalachizut on the left, and on the right, a full rendition in Dakota, beginning Wakhantanka Ishnana Wakhan, which means in Dakota, La ilaha illallah. From Greenland to the Great Lakes, these newspapers took root right after the mid-19th century, breaking fresh ground within their own language families. But within the broader scope of indigenous print, these papers were themselves preempted, anticipated by another periodical. Often acclaimed the very first newspaper in a native North American language, a paper published near the opening of the 19th century, and which returns us to our own opening today, to Iroquoian languages, not the northern legacies that were likened back in 2011 to the Sharia, but to South Iroquoian, to the sole southern member of this language family, to Cherokee. The Cherokee Phoenix would arise in Georgia, seeing its first issue filled with columns both in English and in Cherokee appear on February the 21st, 1828. This weekly paper was remarkable for its very early print date, but also its profound script innovations. The Cherokee Phoenix launching an indigenous print tradition, but also standardizing a new script. The syllabic system fashioned by Sequoyah, finalized, as we mentioned at the beginning, in 1821, a script that was not alphabetic, but syllabic. Its system of glyphs, you can see on the left-hand side here, featuring mostly single characters that signal clusters of sounds, consonant and vowel, arising from the syllable's essential importance as a semantic unit in Cherokee. Double in its language, this paper first appeared in 1828, also under a double title, labeled in English as the Cherokee Phoenix, but offering a more assonant title in Cherokee itself, Jalagi Julehi Sanahi, a title that literally suggests rising up, a linguistic rising, the ascent of language. Jalagi is Cherokee, and Julehi Sanahi means it has risen. It's the word that is used here for the phoenix, something rising up, but we get this sense in the original language of the language rising. Traversing material divides and media, passing from oral traditions to textual audiences, the Cherokee Phoenix also performed a dual service, both an innovator and an instructor. Printing Cherokee columns to read, but also columns on how to read Cherokee, teaching the new syllabic script at the same time that it provided practical texts. This simultaneity is signaled in the Cherokee Phoenix from its very first issue, the paper's initial February 21st, 1828 printing, featuring the actual grid of Cherokee glyphs to guide the readers, but with Cherokee script, it is also scripture that launches the newspaper as well. Found on the very same page, the syllabic table of characters is accompanied by a canonical text in the paper's first issue, a text from the New Testament, conventionally known as the Lord's Prayer, in Cherokee, Ogi Doda Galatadi Hehi, which means literally, Our Father, you who dwell in the above, in the heavens, Galatladi, merging semantic and sacred, prompting readers not only to scan the page to decipher a new script, but also to call above for grace. This Christian content of the Cherokee Phoenix is no coincidence, but reflects the paper's founding editor, the brilliant Elias Boudinot, or sometimes you hear Boudinot, known by his name in Cherokee as Galigina, which just means buck, Galigina, whose Christian conversion and specifically Moravian education, Moravian church education, seems to motivate some choices in the paper's editing. Biblical sources do surface in the Cherokee Phoenix, but more surprising, its pages are not reserved exclusively for the Christian, but include columns also reflecting Quranic concerns as well. Still in its first year of print, the Cherokee Phoenix would publish in September 1828 the following selection. Now up on the screen, a detail that shows discrete parallel columns on a single page, covering side by side indigenous land claims as well as Islam's call to prayer. The right hand reporting on the Adhan, the left hand on territorial rights of the Cherokee. In close proximity, physical American spaces sit adjacent to the celestial sounds of the Muslim world. Readers of this Cherokee paper even receiving imperfect Arabic approximations, terms such as muadhin, imam, Quran, italicized to suggest their non-English etymologies. The phrase Allahu Akbar is even transliterated too as part of the text of the Adhan. Tracing global lines that link indigenous soil to the soaring call to prayer, the Cherokee Phoenix, this newspaper of indigenous speech, risen again, offers also Arabic words that ascend from minarets, a merger of lands and languages, American and Muslim, that assumes new urgency as the Cherokee Phoenix continues its print run, extending its campaign to educate its readers in this column, dedicated to spelling out the conjugation of a single Cherokee verb, not only any verb though, but one that suggests verbalization itself. The verb to speak, jinega, I speak, or here inventoried in the imperative mood, hinegi, speak thou, command to speak. Ironically self-reflective, this page gestures to the same shift, orality to literacy that we've been considering today, newly preserving the verb of vocal activity as visual script, performing in microcosm the mission of the paper itself, aiming to preserve in printed characters the capacious richness of spoken Cherokee. It is not this column's paradox of visible speech, though, but its proximity to another column that seems most intriguing, sitting right beside a report that also spans inscription and survival. Another column not filled with Cherokee characters, but a character portrait of a Muslim author, an author who had suffered for 4 decades in America the horrors of human enslavement, Ibrahim Abdul Rahman ibn Sori. Born and educated in West Africa before the beginning in 1788 of his 40 years of unimaginable cruelty in American captivity, by 1828, Ibrahim Abdul Rahman had very recently achieved manumission. And beyond all odds, it was his Arabic literacy that had catalyzed a string of events leading to liberation from early America's most abject injustice. Seeking to raise capital to secure his children's release, Abdul Rahman would travel with his wife up the US Atlantic coast before ultimately sailing from New England, crossing the ocean once again, seeking to return to the Senegambian region of his youth. Traveling north up the eastern seaboard in 1828, Abdul Rahman attracted much notice from the US press, with vivid portraits of this Muslim author appearing in newspapers across America. But it is in the Cherokee Phoenix where such reports seem especially resonant. Coinciding with the paper's opening year, 1828, the release of Abdul Rahman was mentioned more than once in the Cherokee Phoenix, with first notice surfacing on December the 3rd, 1828, highlighting both his Muslim faith and Arabic philology. And aptly, the very same month he was featured in the Cherokee Phoenix, Abdul Rahman himself reached Philadelphia in his northern travels to New England. It was here in Philadelphia where his own most famed Arabic manuscript would be written, a document bearing a canonical title that we've already seen today, the Lord's Prayer. December 1828 document still housed in Philadelphia at the American Philosophical Society, receiving significant prior critical attention, including from Alan D. Austin, to whom so many of us owe so much who work in this field. This 1828 manuscript was written at request, with Abdul Rahman asked to write in Arabic the core petition of Christianity, the Lord's Prayer. But rather than the Lord's Prayer, as you can see from the New Testament, Abdul Rahman instead inscribes the Quran's first chapter, the Basmalah beginning there in line 1, with the full Fatiha following, but also added benedictions upon the Prophet as well. A fascinating act of substitution, semantic and spiritual, subtly exchanging textual and creedal traditions. This act makes even more meaningful, at least to me, the mention of Abdul Rahman in the Cherokee Phoenix. Writing in a script unreadable to most Americans in December 1828, Abdul Rahman authors a paper misconstrued as the Lord's Prayer, even as he becomes the subject of a landmark Cherokee newspaper that itself had opened with the Lord's Prayer, but also written in a script unreadable to most Americans. Recently released from 4 decades of ultimate injustice, the Fatiha here confesses the faith of Abdul Rahman, but covertly, these Arabic lines remaining indecipherable to its Christian recipient in 1828, allowing a Muslim author to both speak, yet remain silent to his immediate audience. After 4 decades enduring the horrors of American enslavement, here in 1828, Abdul Rahman preserves on paper these most recited ayat, these most vocalized verses recorded in December 1828, the very same month that his name is preserved in the Cherokee Phoenix. This paper's pages invoking Abdul Rahman's Arabic writings alongside verbs of vocalized indigenous speech, memorializing the life and literacy of Abdul Rahman in the very same periodical that now stands as our memorial to early Cherokee struggles to sustain language, to catalyze literacy, struggles in the face of horrific national violence, the 19th century terror of dispossession, the trauma of dislocation, anticipations of which are already witnessed in the Cherokee Phoenix itself the same year it started, the newspaper already in 1828 reporting events reflecting anxieties that culminate in a decade's time with the catastrophe of the Trail of Tears. The world historic crime of forced removal, often fatal, of thousands of indigenous people, the removal westward to modern-day Oklahoma, where through extraordinary resilience, endurance, preservation of Cherokee language and literacy was renewed. Another press founded, printing yet another periodical. The Cherokee Phoenix, founded in 1828, Georgia would receive in August 1844 an Oklahoma answer with the initial appearance of the Cherokee Messenger, Jalagi Ajinasida, the Cherokee Messenger, that which is sent, a periodical whose monthly but sporadic print run extended into 1846. In the Cherokee Messenger, continuities with the Cherokee Phoenix are conspicuous, including a shared appeal to biblical sources. The book of Genesis, for example, as you can see here, offered in chapter installments from the very first issue published in 1844. But other connective lines, other scriptural echoes extend into this Oklahoma periodical as well, but ones that are less expected. Even as the Cherokee press arose again in the American West, Middle Eastern identities emerge, introduced through a regular feature in the Cherokee Messenger dedicated to global geography, rendering a didactic manual in this Cherokee Digest, surveying world areas and eras, including those of the Muslim world. This selection here, for example, offers a synopsis of the quote-unquote Saracens, an archaic, outmoded term, of course, that is transliterated directly here into Cherokee, this section title announcing its topic to be the history of the Saracens, Ani Salaseni in Cherokee. And you can hear Salaseni, Saracens, similar. There's no R sound in Cherokee, so often you'll have the L's instead, Salase rather than Saracen. And the Ani at the beginning is just a plural marker in Cherokee. So we get the Saracens in Cherokee. Saracens is a term that's rather dubious in its implications and in its etymology. Perhaps it's from sharq in Arabic, having something to do with the East. We don't know. What we do know is that Saracen as a word is associated with the Christian West. But in the Cherokee Messenger, more authentic Arabic appeals would emerge as well. Its pages featuring places and persons sacred in the religion, rendering essential Muslim identities in its overview, for instance, of the advent of Islam, with the Cherokee Messenger recording the prophet's initial rejection by the quote-unquote Meccans in Cherokee, Mecca, and Nehi, those who live in Mecca. And it's here too in 1845 that for the first time, at least for the first time that I've been able to find, that not only the place of the prophet's birth, but the prophet's own name is found in Cherokee characters, with the prophet Muhammad too spelled in syllabics from the South Iroquoian language as Mahomedi. So in light of the lines that we've been tracing today between traditions of orality and literacy, it is perhaps most apt to find the Quran to invoked in the Cherokee Messenger, this periodical's overview of Islam's advent, transliterating the very title, the very term Quran. The Book of Islam Cherokee readers are informed in 1845 is called the Quran, Golani and no Sehoi. They call it is called the Quran. This term here, transliterating the title of the Muslim scripture, again with no R, with the L being substituted, just like in Saracens, producing in Cherokee the approximation for the Quran as Golani. Interestingly, Kitab Allah here aptly enters Cherokee with assonance, aesthetically rich in rendition. In Cherokee, Kitab and Quran sound similar. Goweli is book, Kitab, and Golani is Quran. So these terms, both of which suggest the Muslim scripture, form Cherokee cadence, a kind of cadence in Cherokee. Goweli, Golani, the book of the Quran, harmonious in their consonants. Discovering the Quran inscribed anew in indigenous characters makes even more profound our balance, I think, today between orality and literacy. Linking revelatory speech and scriptural writing, the Quran's title recalls its first word revealed, of course, the first term transmitted, Iqra, the start to Al-Alaq, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, a word that spans this same balance, Iqra being, of course, a single imperative of speech, but an imperative that is multiple in media, suggesting recitation and reading, a semantic span that is here suggested anew in American context with this sacred term and scriptural title, the Quran, challenging Cherokee editors to innovate a new sound cluster, Golani, the Muslim scripture prompting indigenous syllabics to form a fresh triliteral, it just so happens to be 3 letters, a triliteral term, these 3 glyphs synthesized together for the first time in Golani, Quran. A bridge between the Muslim scripture and the Cherokee script, this Oklahoma page in 1845 is unexpected, it's unforeseen, and yet itself foresaw the century that would follow in which such overlaps expand. Connections between the Quran and Cherokee did not stop with landmark periodicals in 1845. Instead, from landlocked Oklahoma, these connections would extend across the ocean, linking Muslim lands and American frontiers. Such bridges between are double in direction, extending reciprocally across the Atlantic. 2 of these bridges I'll briefly mention to conclude today, one which is rather early and speculative, the other which is much later and more concrete. The former of the 2, the earlier speculative bridge between the Cherokee language and Muslim lands, extends during the very same years that the Cherokee Messenger was first planned and its press founded, the 1830s into the early 1840s, a decade in which another new syllabic script was fashioned, a syllabic script not in the American Far West, but in West Africa. During the 1830s, a writing system for the Vai language in Liberia first arose, a literacy system for an oral language, again, seen here, a system that again appears in a grid of glyphs, its characters typically representing clusters of sounds, again, consonant and vowel, a script system nearly simultaneous and with distinct similarities to Cherokee, prompting some scholars to even suggest that these 2 scripts crossing 2 continents are not merely coincident, but historically connected, bolstered by the fact that the new Cherokee system was familiar to some in West Africa during the late 1820s, early 1830s, reflecting America's longstanding engagements in Liberia. Critics such as the late Paul Hare and following Conrad Tuchscher have explored with fascinating but entirely inconclusive results this potential connection, a connection which, if authentic, would form a poignant counterpart, I think, to the early Cherokee links with the Muslim world that we've been exploring today, especially in light of the sacred Islamic sources that Vai syllabics have frequently inscribed, including, of course, the Quran, with the Fatiha here pictured, printed in Vai characters. And you can see Amin at the bottom, transliterated into Vai syllabics. And I note the discrete Vai syllabics on the left there. that make up that term. Syllabics, which for some scholars claim a distinct or distant Cherokee substrate, which would signify that this Quranic inscription at least faintly echoes indigenous writings, with the Fatiha itself, the opener in Vai, linked with letters that first opened literacy traditions in Cherokee. This bridge in the mid-19th century between our subjects today is tentative. It's merely a theory and remains debatable. Another more certain link between Cherokee letters and the Muslim world also took root at this very same time, though, leading Islamic diction to impact discourse in Cherokee, helping to shape the very letters in Cherokee that started my talk today, the same syllabics that occupy my title. As we have seen, it was in 1844 that Oklahoma's first periodical began, this year witnessing a new indigenous print venue founded in the form of the Cherokee Messenger. It was also in 1844 that a new faith tradition was also founded in Iran, with Sayyid Ali Muhammad Shirazi's declaration to be the Bab, the gateway to a new religious legacy, Babism, whose lineages would also open environs for the Baha'i tradition as the 19th century unfolded. Crossing the globe, these two starts in 1845, giving rise to venues of writing and religion, publishing a new periodical in the American West, professing new beliefs in Western Iran. These two starts in 1844 seem totally separate, yes, entirely discrete. But a century later, these two events would intertwine. Rather than Cherokee letters impacting Muslim literacies, as is possibly suggested by the Vai syllabics, a faith formed in the Muslim world would receive fresh expression in Cherokee, witnessed at the middle of the 20th century with selections from the Baha'i canon rendered into Cherokee, circulated in this pamphlet entitled A New Day Comes. A translation undertaken by Ben Bushyhead and Moses Owl, working on their rendition in traditional Cherokee territories in the east in North Carolina. This handwritten pamphlet appeared in 1954, a pamphlet rendering Baha'i prayers into Cherokee with sources original to Arabic, given voice in this indigenous American language. Of course, the Baha'i faith is entirely its own tradition. It's a religion with its own unique chronology, its own unique commitments. It's wholly discrete from other religions, including Islam. It is equally true, though, that the Baha'i canon bears linguistic, stylistic traces of its origins in a Muslim cultural milieu, unsurprisingly echoing texts and traditions central to Islam, including teachings such as Tawheed. And so in the Cherokee pages of this 1954 pamphlet, handwritten in North Carolina, readers encountered declarations of divine oneness, including the terms that comprise the title of my talk, a phrase that reflects, as I mentioned, an Arabic original, accenting the ontologic exclusive Allah alone. But beyond this broad teaching of Tawheed, more specific Muslim material emerges in the following words, or in the words that follow this phrase of Tawheed. Our Cherokee translation continues with terms resonant for our topic today. As this particular Baha'i prayer progresses, the following words are voiced in Cherokee. Untla nawada lehi unetla nahi yeha neski uwasa. Although perhaps not immediately obvious and difficult to make out even in the Cherokee script because it's handwritten, this rendition presents us with words that are very recognizable to us, offering in Cherokee the Arabic original La ilaha illahu. Phrase entirely familiar to readers of the Quran, of course, appearing in multiple ayat. These Arabic terms translated via the Baha'i canon into Cherokee arise regularly in Islam's revelation. And in such contexts of the Quran, this precise confession, there is no God but He, is frequently followed by beautiful divine names, the Al-Asma al-Husna, accompanying this phrase with some of the 99 names. For example, the phrase is followed in chapter 2 in Surah Al-Baqarah with Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, in chapter 3 of the Quran, Al-Aziz Al-Hakim, Perhaps most well known, to go back to chapter 2 of the Quran, the throne verse, which follows this same phrase with al-Hayyul al-Qayyum. And this verse of the throne, of course, also ends with other asma, al-Aliyul al-Azim. So why is that important to us, the asma following la ilaha illa huwa? Well, it is precisely such contexts in the Quran that are also recalled in the Arabic prayer as it is rendered into Cherokee, following there is no God but he in this Cherokee source and the source that is used by the Cherokee translators. This prayer that is translated include the Asma, including the very same divine names that end the throne verse. And so this Baha'i source translated into Cherokee, this Arabic prayer ends with the same Asma al-Ali al-Azim, terms which are translated into Cherokee as Galat Ladiyu, Utli Ekwohiyu, meaning most sublime, most great, which is apt for the Arabic. Translated into Cherokee, these indigenous asma aptly reflect their Arabic originals, not only spiritually, but aesthetically endowed with assonance, rendering al-Ali al-Azim with rhyming divine names in Cherokee, Galat Ladiyu, Udli Ekwohiyu. These al-asma al-husna, assuming a new beauty, unique to South Iroquoian expression, faintly stylized, implying a kind of Cherokee sajja. Accenting the auditory contours of Quranic phrases in Cherokee syllabics returns us to the links between orality and literacy pervading our lecture today since our very start, links which also aptly anticipate our very end. Turning to the last page of this Cherokee pamphlet, to the ending prayer of the new day, we find that the final prayer of this publication begins with a single short imperative, the closing petition of this Cherokee source, opening with a phrase that concretely embodies so many of our concerns today. Hinegi Janet Lanahi, say, oh God. But it's the Hinegi that I'm interested in here, say, the imperative to say. A Cherokee phrase that translates the Arabic original, Kul Ilahi, say, my God. Of course, the reason this last phrase is especially resonant for us is its echo of the Quran. This command here starting the final prayer, translated into Cherokee, again seems familiar from the Muslim scripture. The imperative that starts, of course, the final surah is Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. Familiar from the Quran, Qul, say, as it enters Cherokee, as Hinegi, is also familiar to us, though, from another source, one from America, a text from Tigbe, Hinegi being the very same command to speak that we saw surface in the Cherokee Phoenix, the very imperative to say that was situated in proximity to this newspaper's memorial to Ibrahim Abdul Rahman. This Cherokee verbal form, its imperative to speak, seemed especially resonant, printed in parallel with a West African author who both confesses and yet keeps quiet his Muslim faith through acts of Arabic writing. Now this same Cherokee verbal form, Hinegi, speak, this imperative to say, emerges at the end to a pamphlet of written prayers rendered from Arabic, translating the Arabic Qul, command with its own distinct resonance recalling Islam scripture. And it is with this final imperative that we end today, finding not only another intersection between Cherokee letters and Quranic echoes, but also apt paradoxes of silence and enunciation, with the very command to speak remaining muted due to its inscription within this long overlooked Cherokee pamphlet, whose religious roots reflect Muslim lands. Embodied in this imperative to speak, to make audible, is the intertwining of global traditions of religion and writing, which have awaited a new day, have awaited us today to return to speech, enunciating again the Islamic engagements that have stayed silent yet preserved in Iroquoian language inscriptions. Thank you.
Wow, Jeff, thank you so much. This is just incredibly fascinating and eye-opening material. Thanks very much, Jeff. And you may have seen there have been some very appreciative notes in the chat box as well, as various folks had to hop off the call. So once again, we're grateful to you for making time to share your scholarship with us, and grateful to all of you in the audience for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you again soon at another Alevaralak Center event. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.